Hi everyone, back again with our what I would like to have happen or what I think will happen for each team in this offseason going into 2026. Today's team is the Seattle Mariners, and this comes after we discussed last time the San Diego Padres. Now, to quickly, not necessarily recap, but mention a move that we discussed last time, and it's kind of convenient. Just hopping right into what needs to happen here. Still battling this little cold, which is frustrating, but it happens. There's the, at least idea here of, and obviously these are just ideas, these are just thoughts. Randy Arozarena going to the Padres. In return, the Mariners get Wandy Peralta. Could be straight up, could be some cash going one way, could be a prospect, but that's the general idea of the trade. The Mariners have one of the best farm systems in baseball, and some of those people in said farm system include Colt Emerson, middle infielder. Ideally, he'd be a shortstop going forward, but that's how he's listed. Could always move around. Then there's Cade Anderson, who was just drafted from LSU, left-handed pitcher, followed by, I'm going to say Lazaro, but it could be Lazaro. I don't know if there's an accent, but Lazaro Montes, he's next. Outfielder, big power, but swing and miss concerns. He's 21, just got up to Double-A. Harry Ford, catcher, made his debut. Will take over Mitch Garver's spot as the backup catcher to Cal Raleigh. And the last one I'll mention right now is Ryan Sloan, who's a 19-year-old right-handed pitcher. Right-handed pitcher, if I didn't say that clearly enough. And he's been in high A at the end of 2025. So, highly rated farm system. Team made the ALCS, lost to the Blue Jays in Game 7. So what are we looking to do here? Well, free agents, this is kind of where we go next. Free agents include Jorge Polanco, who is listed as a second baseman, but he's really more of a DH, followed by Eugenio Suarez, who is a third baseman, but also should see time at DH because his fielding's not that great. Josh Naylor, first baseman / DH, mainly first baseman at this point because he's still athletic. They've re-signed him already, so that's a positive. And then two relievers, Gregory Santos, Caleb Ferguson, and Mitch Garver, who I've already mentioned. And with this trade idea, one of those relievers is replaced, and we've already talked about how Ford replaces Garver. So then the question becomes, so I had a sort of a plan, but I realized that it didn't make sense for either party, this trade I was going to suggest, the other trade. So we just scrapped that because, and I'll get to the other team that would have been involved, but it involved Bryce Miller, and I just don't think that's that good of an idea for either side. But moving on from that, I added Francis Pena actually in that trade if there needed to be a Padres prospect. He's a reliever. He's only in Double-A, but it's an idea. And like I said before, for the Mariners, they were a bad defensive team, which I think was part of what led to some of the starting pitching numbers being down in 2025. They were one of the worst defensive teams in the league with, I don't know if it was outs above average or defensive runs saved. It was one of those two stats, but they were bad. And one of the guys that contributed was Randy Arozarena, who, again, as I said in the Padres video, at this point, he's going to make around $16 million for his last year of arbitration, which lowers the risk for the Padres. And between Canzone, Cal Raleigh on his days where he's not catching and is DHing instead, and then one of the two who will bring back between Polanco and Suarez, I don't think he's needed as much, talking about Randy, which is why we made that trade. So I already recapped that. The next move we're going to make Well, actually, it comes down to, because I changed this plan now, going over what position in the lineup is needed versus what we think of both Polanco and Suarez. Because at the end of the day, it's either one of those two or what? I mean, invest in pitching, invest more in the bullpen. In this situation, we've already gotten Wandy Peralta. So to me, it's, again, Polanco or Suarez. And I think positionally, if we're saying that Suarez is still a third baseman, which that it gets to a stage of, I already said this team needs to be better defensively. And this is a guy who didn't hit for the Mariners, plus was not great defensively. Does it make sense to bring him back? Probably not. However, do you trust Ben Williamson at third base? Or do you trust Ryan Bliss to go in there? Or move Cole Young from second to third? Or bring up Colt Emerson quickly and put him at third and then move him back over to short when J.P. Crawford's contract runs out after 2026? Like, you get to these questions, and I think the sensible pick is Polanco. But I could also see the argument for Suarez. I can see the argument for neither, actually. But as it is, I believe one will come in, and then that'll more or less be the offseason. And then they'll just rely again on the strength of the pitching staff, which is mainly the starting rotation of, as we all know, Wu, Gilbert, Castillo, Kirby, Miller, with extras being Evans, Hancock, and then eventually Anderson. There's also Michael Morales, but we're talking like MLB proven so far. Cade Anderson's really highly rated, so I put him over Morales for that reason. Now, looking at some projections, because I figured I'd mention this, the other question is, how do they, speaking of the Mariners, obviously, one way to improve upon 2025 is, since there's not much in terms of changes, really, I mean, pretty much literally, other than maybe that trade, which, again, that's just a suggestion at this point, obviously. How do they improve and get over the hump to get to the World Series and win it? And with these projections, these are on Fangraphs, so I'm guessing it's the Steamer ones. They have Julio Rodriguez, they're talking about WAR here, going from 5.7 to 6.2. Kyle Raleigh dropping this huge drop from 9 to 5. Naylor going from 3.1 to 2.7. J.P. Crawford going from 2.8 to 2.6. Randy, who in this exercise here we've traded, going from 2.9 to 2.1, which that's still not bad. That still warrants that contract if it gets to $16 million. But you could always put different guys in the outfield. Ken Zone. You can always bring in another. Like, there's a number of cheap options. I don't need to list them, but if you want to know, just look them up. I mean, just go to SpotTrack or anything that talks about free agents. There's a bunch of outfielders that, whether it's left-handed, right-handed, however you want to look at it, there's guys who are out there, probably right-handed, since they still have Ken Zone and Rayleigh. Other notable ones, Cole Young going from a negative 0.3, but that was like a short stint his rookie season. He's still technically a rookie, but to 1.6. Ben Williamson going from 0.4 to 1.5, which I'm assuming is a lot of glove, but also the bat improving. Harry Ford barely played, going from 0 to 1. Canzone dropping some. Robles going from, Canzone dropping about 0.6, but Robles going from negative 0.2 to 0.9. Emerson coming up and putting up 0.6. And then they project Polanco to get 2.3 and Suarez to get 2.7. So maybe that's the debate. Who do you think the Mariners should sign? So yeah, that's an interesting way to go about this. Not too much movement. Pretty much the same lineup, same staff. What do you guys think? I'll see you in the next one. Peace.